No. 29 Objections to National Control of the Militia. A Democratic Federalist. Appeared in the Pennsylvania Packet, October 23, 1787. The following portion of hash 29 and hash 30 are excerpted from the Address and Reasons of Dissent of the Minority of the Convention of the State of Pennsylvania to their constituents. December 12, 1787. Hume, an aristocratical writer, has candidly confessed that an army is a moral distemper in a government, of which it must at last inevitably perish. 2 de Burgh, 349. And the Earl of Oxford, the friend of France, and the Pretender, the attainted Oxford, said in the British Parliament, in a speech on the Mutiny Bill, that, while he had breath, he would speak for the liberties of his country, and against courts martial and a standing army in peace, as dangerous to the Constitution. Ibid. Page 455. Such were the speeches even of the enemies of liberty, when Britain had yet a right to be called free. But, says Mr. James Wilson, it is necessary to maintain the appearance of strength, even in times of the most profound tranquility. And what is this more than a threadbare hackneyed argument, which has been answered over and over in different ages, and does not deserve even the smallest consideration? Had we a standing army when the British invaded our peaceful shores? Was it a standing army that gained the battles of Lexington and Bunker Hill, and took the ill-fated Burgoyne? Is not a well-regulated militia sufficient for every purpose of internal defense? And which of you, my fellow citizens, is afraid of any invasion from foreign powers that our brave militia would not be able immediately to repel? Mr. Wilson says that he does not know of any nation in the world which has not found it necessary to maintain the appearance of strength in a season of the most profound tranquility. If by this equivocal assertion he has meant to say that there is no nation in the world without a standing army in time of peace, he has been mistaken. I need only adduce the example of Switzerland, which, like us, is a republic, whose 13 cantons, like our 13 states, are under a federal government, and which besides is surrounded by the most powerful nations in Europe, all jealous of its liberty and prosperity. And yet that nation has preserved its freedom for many ages, with the sole help of a militia, and has never been known to have a standing army, except when in actual war. Why should we not follow so glorious an example? And are we less able to defend our liberty without an army than that brave but small nation which, with its militia alone, has hitherto defied all Europe? A democratic federalist. The framers of this Constitution appear to have been sensible that no dependence could be placed on the people for their support, but on the contrary, that the government must be executed by force. They have therefore made a provision for this purpose in a permanent standing army, and a militia that may be objected to as strict discipline and government. A standing army in the hands of a government placed so independent of the people may be made a fatal instrument to overturn the public liberties. It may be employed to enforce the collection of the most oppressive taxes, and to carry into execution the most arbitrary measures. An ambitious man who may have the army at his devotion may step up into the throne and seize upon absolute power. The absolute unqualified command that Congress have over the militia may be made instrumental to the destruction of all liberty, both public and private, whether of a personal, civil, or religious nature. First, the personal liberty of every man, probably from 16 to 60 years of age, may be destroyed by the power Congress have in organizing and governing of the militia. As militia, they may be subjected to fines to any amount, levied in a military manner. They may be subjected to corporal punishments of the most disgraceful and humiliating kind, and to death itself by the sentence of a court-martial. To this our young men will be more immediately subjected, as a select militia, composed of them, will best answer the purposes of government. Secondly, the rights of conscience may be violated, as there is no exemption of those persons who are conscientiously scrupulous of bearing arms. These compose a respectable proportion of the community in the state Pennsylvania. This is the more remarkable, because even when the distresses of the late war and the evident disaffection of many citizens of that description inflamed our passions, and when every person who was obliged to risk his own life must have been exasperated against such as on any account kept back from the common danger. Yet even then, when outrage and violence might have been expected, the rights of conscience were held sacred. At this momentous crisis, the framers of our state constitution made the most express and decided declaration and stipulations in favor of the rights of conscience. But now, when no necessity exists, those dearest rights of men are left insecure. Thirdly, the absolute command of Congress over the militia may be destructive of public liberty. For under the guidance of an arbitrary government, they may be made the unwilling instruments of tyranny. The militia of Pennsylvania may be marched to New England or Virginia to quell an insurrection occasioned by the most galling oppression, and aided by the standing army, they will no doubt be successful in subduing their liberty and independency. But in so doing, although the magnanimity of their minds will be extinguished, yet the meaner passions of resentment and revenge will be increased, and these in turn will be the ready and obedient instruments of despotism to enslave the others, and that with an irritated vengeance. Thus may the militia be made the instruments of crushing the last efforts of expiring liberty, of riveting the chains of despotism on their fellow citizens, and on one another. This power can be exercised not only without violating the Constitution, but in strict conformity with it. It is calculated for this express purpose, and will doubtless be executed accordingly. As this government will not enjoy the confidence of the people, but be executed by force, it will be a very expensive and burdensome government. The standing army must be numerous, and as a further support, it will be the policy of this government to multiply officers in every department. Judges, collectors, tax gatherers, excisemen, and the whole host of revenue officers will swarm over the land, devouring the hard earnings of the industrious like the locusts of old, impoverishing and desolating all before them.